Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? It appears that you can. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're watching, why don't you say hi so we know who is here while we wait for some last minute folks to join. Hi, flying elephants. Well, as we're waiting for people to come in and introduce themselves, I will let you know that I'll introduce myself. I'm David Kane. I am a full-time professional juggler. I am a juggling historian, author of 12 juggling history books, author of about 250 or more e-juggle articles. I am also the owner and curator of the Juggling History Museum, which is where we are at right now. We're in a different room than we'd normally broadcast from in the museum, but there's a reason for that, which you'll hear about shortly. I'm also the festival director for the 2019 IJA Festival. So I am happy to be here with you today. Our theme of the day is the props of Edward Van Wyck. Edward Van Wyck was a juggler in the late 1800s. His stage name was Eddie Evans. He invented some of the early three-club juggling tricks, such as doing a 180, a half pirouette with three clubs, just throwing one back over his head and turning the other way. Seems like the most basic trick to us nowadays, but he was apparently the first person to do that. He called it the running trick. He would be running on a stage towards the wings and would throw one back over his head and turn around and catch it, and while he was running the other way, and so he called it the running trick. But he was an early club juggler. Club juggling started in the about 1875-ish, we think. And originally, the first people to juggle clubs just juggled solid wood Indian clubs, exercise clubs. And then at some point, we believe, Edward Van Wyck got a hold of a club. Let me grab it here. He got a hold of one of these. This was a exhibition club. It was for people who would exhibit swinging clubs all day. To swing those really heavy clubs all day was kind of impossible to do it over and over again. And so if you were an exhibitor trying to sell clubs, you would have one of these, which is a hollowed out Indian club. It was great for swinging, but the walls of it were too thin for dropping very often. Just drop it a couple times, they would probably break open. And so Edward Van Wyck probably saw this at some point and said, I wonder if I can take this idea but make one sturdy enough for juggling. And so the story goes that he did that for himself, and he made some that worked pretty well. And as other jugglers saw his clubs, they started saying, hey, can you make those for me? Can you make some for me? Can you make some for me? And so in 1895, he retired from performing and he began selling props, making juggling clubs especially, but other props as well. So we're going to start off by talking about his clubs. I do have one of his very early clubs here, probably from the 1890s. Let me do something here. And it is wood. It's all of his clubs were wood. It is hollow wood, but it's still very heavy, even compared to his later clubs, but especially to us today. It's very, very heavy, probably over a pound. And we'll talk about the construction of his clubs here in a moment. But Van Wyck was most proud of his decorations. He was the first person to use lightweight, very thin foil decorations on clubs, and so he always said that's what he was most proud of. Of course, everyone else remembers him just for being the first person to actually make retail juggling clubs. But and so this is very rare. We only know of two of these super old, really early Van Wicks still in existence. So let's get to the construction of his clubs. This is an uncovered Van Wyck, and so you might be able to see that there's a line that goes right down here. And so what he would do is he would make it. It's a three-piece construction. He would make the body, and then he would cut it in half, and then he would hollow out each side so that it made two cups going together. And then obviously before he put them back together, he would drill out a hole in one of them and for the handle, which he lathed separately. And he would dovetail this connection so that it fit back together very snugly. And on this club, you can kind of see that it used to be one piece, but when he put them back together, he didn't match up the connection points. This point had been here, and so you can kind of see that it was at one point one piece, but he cut it and then hollowed it out. You can see the point here where it was on the lathe, one end of the lathe. So he would put this into this piece. There's a wooden nut that holds the handle on that was glued in there, and then this piece was glued back into here and dovetailed together. And then the next step would be to cover the club, the body of the club, with glued fabric, canvas. And so this one just has the canvas on it. And so it was cut in a certain way that it would be all covered with glue, and then it would be put on a certain way. And if you were to see up close, you can see the lines where the ends of the fabric are. And then once that was dried and everything, then he would put on the foil decorations. And so that's one of the hallmarks of most Van Wyck, not all, but most Van Wyck clubs, is the ribbing that you can see there in the handle. Most Van Wyck clubs have that ribbing in the handle, I think, just for a better grip. So those are his basic clubs. He did make some other types of clubs. He made a small version club, possibly for children or for numbers, perhaps. But of quite a bit smaller. He also made oversized clubs. He made, I've got two different models here. This one, which you can see is a bit longer, and this one, which is not quite as long as the last one, but almost, and it is larger in girth. And so this one still has its original decorations. Very nice shape. This is the only one of this model I've ever seen. So, he also made a short-handled version, slightly different, perhaps, body shape, but the handle is definitely a little shorter and thicker. We think that this cutoff here was done after the market, that someone decided they wanted to do chin rolls or something, and so they copied what Bobby May did, which is having clubs with a flat end to it. So these are extremely rare too, the short-handled. He also made other novelty clubs, such as bounding clubs or bouncing clubs. They would have cork on the end, so that when they hit the stage, they would then bounce. Usually use that for passing. He made bell clubs that somehow had a bell inside them when you juggled them. And he made electrically lit clubs, if you can believe it, back in 1900. The first electrically lit clubs were actually patented in 1896 or so by Morris Cronin. So they, believe it or not, 120 years ago, there were electrically lit clubs. And so he had all those different types of clubs. A basic club like this retailed for $2.50, which back then was a lot of money. In 1900 was a lot of money, but he was making each one by hand, so that was a lot of work. Also, I've got a one of a kind, as far as we've never seen another one, a mirrored Van Wyck as well. All right, let me look on here and see if we've got any questions that have been coming in. Was the guy secretly the Hulk? No, he was not, but he made props for pretty much for whatever you need. He was the primary prop maker in the United States from 1895 to 1920. All right. As I said, he made more than just clubs. Oh, by the way, I should say in 1920, he passed the club making part of his business, which really was his biggest part of his business at that point, on to Harry Lind. Harry Lind was from Jamestown, New York, and he was a more gifted woodworker than Van Wyck. And so Van Wyck wanted to concentrate on other circus props, bigger props. He found that he was spending a lot of time on small juggling props that weren't making him a huge amount of money, rather than large circus apparatus that he could make a lot more money on. And so in 1920, he passed on the club making aspect of his business to Harry Lind and kept doing larger circus props. But there are some other things that in the collection here at the Museum of Juggling History that of props made by Edward Van Wyck. And so let's look at some danger props. He used these, or made these, juggling knives. I've got actually 3 of them here. Very, very rare. Oh, I only know a couple sets of these that still survive. And he sold these. I'm actually looking at one of his catalogs right here in my hand. He sold these for $2.50 a piece as well, just like his clubs. The flip on them is very odd because the flip is it's farther back here than we're used to, juggling club type prop. But those are pretty amazing. He also made juggling axes, and he made 3 different styles. They're made from aluminum with a wooden handle, and right here is one of them. And he sold these for, depending on which style that you wanted, either $2.50, $2.75, or $3, which once again was a lot of money back then. So that's really cool. He also made throwing knives, and the museum has a set of 10 of his throwing knives. And so these this is one of those throwing knives. Very cool. And he sold those for, well, let's see, I've got $18 a set. He made mouse sticks and head pedestals. I actually have here the very first mouse stick he ever made. And that is this one right here. A performer, American juggler named Billy Turco, went to Van Wyck and said, hey, I've seen some European juggler using a mouse stick. I don't know exactly what it looked like, and so this is the first thing they made. I actually have 2 similar ones that Van Wyck made. And so that the performer simply bit down, and you can see kind of the bite mark there, where it would bite like that, and it would be at a weird angle or whatever. And so that was the first version of a Van Wyck mouse stick. Eventually, and they also tried this as well, which had a little more bite to it. And you can actually see teeth marks. Teeth marks on there. There, I think. Yeah, there you can see it. I think at the bottom. And so it's concave here. But eventually, Van Wyck came up with this type of mouse stick. We've got a straight one here, and we've got 2 here that have an angle to them. And so this became much more prevalent. You could, depending on where you bit down on the mouse stick, it could be at varying angles. And so that was an innovation that he eventually figured out. I also have this head pedestal. So it's concave there and concave there. But I have many photos of this being used. All these mouse sticks and head pedestals belong to Billy Turco, as I said earlier. And if you want to look him up, his last name is spelled Tirko. I've written a number of 1 or 2 articles, I believe, on Billy Turco and explaining and showing him using all these props. And so he would have that there. And he would do some amazing combination tricks, some unequal combination tricks with this on his head. I have a smaller pedestal here as well, concave on both sides. And so those were made by Van Wyck. Also, I have a treat here. I have what I believe I can't say for certain with this one. Everything else here I know is Van Wyck. But I believe this may be the only existing, as far as we know, Van Wyck Diablo set. It was Billy Turco's. You got everything else from Van Wyck. We do know that Van Wyck sold Diablos. He sold them for $2.50 for a set. And so we think this is a Van Wyck Diablo, which is pretty amazing. And the last prop I have, oh no, I've got two more. I have this, which is a mouse stick with 3 sticks for spinning plates on. Obviously, the sticks are new, and the tape here is new, but the actual metal prop itself is original. And we actually have, you're probably not going to be able to see this, but we do have a picture of a performer using one of these right there. And it's the one there in the rectangular box in his mouth. He's got one of these spinning plates. Speaking of plates, we do have a Van Wyck juggling plate. This is not a spinning plate. He actually sold them for juggling. Some of his catalogs actually show this plate. This was Billy Turco's as well, and so it's a metal plate. It's like the perfect size for juggling, and so it's really neat that we still have that. All right. Well, those are the props that we have. So I can tell you that Van Wyck died in 1952. As I said, he did continue to make circus props, but for the most part, he passed on the juggling portion of his business to Harry Lind. Now, sometime in the future, we'll do a live stream about Harry Lind because we've got lots of things we can talk about with him. So let me see if anyone has any other questions at the moment. All right. Are there any existing pictures knowledge on Van Wyck's workshop? We do have some diagrams, which you can look up online from some of my articles about Van Wyck that show a little bit better how his clubs were put together. We have lots of pictures of Harry Lind's workshop and how he worked and everything, but we don't have that for, to the best of my own knowledge, for Van Wyck. Now, I should say that Van Wyck lived right here in Cincinnati, where the Museum of Juggling History is located, and I've actually been to the location where his workshop was. There's nothing there anymore. It's actually an empty lot. It's like the only empty lot on a street filled with warehouses and things of that sort. But I've been to that location, and so that was really neat to at least visit there and see where these things were made. His company is not around. That's a great question. But we do, as I said, we do have, we've got a number of catalogs. You can look that up online as well. You look up Edward Van Wyck e-Juggle, and you'll find various catalogs of Van Wyck. Also, if you have my book, Juggling Props: A History, Volume 2, you will find all, I believe, of the known Van Wyck catalogs in there. And so that's really cool. Van Wyck put out some publications, several publications of jugglers that featured jugglers from around the world that used his props. One was something to the extent of America and Europe's greatest jugglers. Another one was, I think, America and Europe's greatest performers. And so there were a number of things along those lines. He also, there were a couple of books that were published in conjunction with him. A performer, I think William Delisle, wrote a book about juggling, and it featured a lot of the items that Van Wyck sold. And so I've done an article about that as well, if you look that up. William Delisle, Delisle, I believe. And so he was neat. He also sold devil sticks, drum major batons, swords for sword swallowing, a 3-comedy cannonball set where you'd have two, they would really be wooden balls, and one, I guess, inflatable ball. They were all painted silver, and so you would do the old gag of juggling the 3 and throwing up the inflated one, and when it hits your head, you clump the other 2 together, and you get knocked over. And so he sold that that set. He sold the glass and 3 straws trick, that you would balance a glass with 3 straws, doing an inverted pyramid underneath it. He sold bounce balls, spinning plates, spinning basins. And then later on, he started selling all types of balancing apparatuses, a huge assortment. Once again, I would encourage you to look up. I think there are some things about the catalogs on eJuggle that I've written, and I've written a little more extensively in my book, Juggling Props: A History, Volume 2, on that. Does anyone have any other questions? Anyone watching that you haven't said hi? I do want to plug the IJA's Patreon page. This is brought to you by the IJA. You can go to their Patreon page, and you can sign up just to even support the IJA at $5 a month. We have what's called the 5 Club, and so it goes to help support all the work the IJA does. All the regional competitions all over the world, the different educational programs, eJuggle, and all types of things. The IJA is best known for their festival, but there's so much more that the IJA does. As I said, we have the resource of eJuggle online. We have the IRCs, the International Regional Competitions, that happen all over the world. We have lots of educational programs and tutorials online, and all types of other things. And so for as low as $5 a month, you can support that work. And I really would encourage you to do that. It helps bring this and all those other things out to the juggling community, which are very much needed. All right. I also want to encourage you to attend the IJA Festival in June. It's the last week of June, June 24th through the 30th. It's going to be in Fort Wayne, Indiana, in the United States. It's a week full of a huge number of things. We've got, well, let's see, probably 8 or 9 different competitions, various shows, probably around 8 or 9 shows. We're hoping to do 100 workshops. We've got, the IJA Stage Championships, the Numbers Championships, the Juggling Championships, the Individual Props, Juggling Competition, the Welcome Show, the Cascade of Stars Public Show. We've got a new thing this year called Challenge Night, which is on the opening night, Monday night of the festival. We're going to have lots of incredible things that you've never seen before that you can get a chance to juggle. We've got giant clubs, some that are just oversized clubs, some that actually float in the air and will reverse their spin when they get to the peak. We've got, we're going to have these huge air-filled garbage bags. Some are just going to be 90 gallons, and some are going to be 4 times as big as that to try and juggle these things as big as you are. We've got the Chaos Clubs, which are the hardest clubs in the world to juggle. We have the Chaos Rings, the hardest rings in the world to juggle. We're going to try and set some passing world records with the world's largest drop back circle passing, the largest feed, and so we have multiple things of that sort that we're going to attempt to do that night. We've got a juggling film festival where people create films, not just of juggling tricks, but of with a plot and everything, an actual short film with a plot, but that somehow involves juggling either as a central a plot point, or the whole theme is juggling, but it's a comedy or a horror movie or an action movie or musical or something like that. So we're having that for the first time, and we've even got some things we haven't announced yet. And so we've got a whole day of games. We've got just lots and lots of things. So I want to plug that as well. And so the IJ is doing wonderful things. I want to just reiterate that I really encourage you to support what they're doing through Patreon and everything else. All right. Does anyone have any last question? We've done our typical half hour, but I want to make sure that if anyone has any questions that I can try and answer them. I appreciate everyone tuning in. I see we've got people from the Americas, from Europe, from Costa Rica. I see. I appreciate everyone that has tuned in. All right. I don't see. We do have another question. Are there any known reproductions of Van Wyck products? Not that I know of. That is a good question. Well, I take that back. A number of people have borrowed some of the mouse sticks. I'm thinking of people like Tom Wall and Chuck Clark to have those recreated by modern woodwork workers because it's such a great design. And so these have been reproduced by a number of people who have borrowed these from me over the years. And so that is the only thing I can think of as far as reproductions. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this. I'll do a little plug as well. If anyone here is coming to the Cincinnati Juggling Festival 2 weeks from now, on Friday, right before the festival starts, we're going to do a museum open house from noon to 5 p.m. So if you're interested in attending that, please contact me. I can fill you in with the where it's at and all that information. But for now, I think we've answered all the questions. And you are very welcome, Lucas. Thank you so much. We try and do this once a month. And so tune in and we will do this again. Thank you and have a great day.